Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We are sort of getting back to normal here in Western New York, if it's all possible after a snowpocalypse. But we'll talk about that later. We'll start off with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
So unless this is going to be down the Tom Brady route, J.J. Watt's going to retire. Mm-hmm. He put it on Instagram. It was interesting because, he's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Great charity work that he's done. I mean, just awesome philanthropist. Mm-hmm. And in his last game, he almost engineered a win. He got a penalty. He got, I forget who they were playing now. Who was
Tampa.
Yeah. He got Tampa to jump off sides by him switching hands late in the game, which I thought was a great move. I don't remember the last time I had seen it. So, he's a guy, a big-time sack guy, a very high-profile guy in the NFL, good guy. We'll see if he stays retired. There's been some good arguments. Hey, when he gets home with that newborn or the 1-year-old that he's holding up in the picture, is he really going to want to be there 24/7? We don't know, but I wish him the best either way.
Jan, I checked in on that game for about 10 minutes, and it was about all I could do to not turn it off when I heard, like, Chris Collinsworth, well, J.J. Watt at 33 years old, he just knows how to do it. And he's like, oh, my God, Chris, shut up, please. You're just so annoying. He's been an annoying color. And, I agree with everything Russ said. J.J. Watt, great player, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but
he could be. He could be.
He's a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any doubt he's a Hall of Famer, J.J. Watt.
Right.
No doubt. First ballot even, possibly.
Well, yeah, and so
I would do it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, well, based on some of the guys who have made the Pro Football Hall of Fame, yes, because there's been some guys like that have made it. Like, really? I mean, I remember the guy back in the day. I'm like, he didn't strike me as being like a Hall of Famer. Like, he's a good player, but no, if it is, we know football players, they will change their minds fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And if there's an offer out there, a 1-year deal for big money, I could see him coming back, but I'll take him for his.
He does have a lot of money though, so
yes,
I could see him coming back with a team that's got a shot at winning a title. Maybe I think that's the one thing. Obviously, he still wants, right? Yeah, Buffalo, yes. No, right now. Well, again, they would have been a good signing last year potentially. Though they got Von Miller, unfortunately, Miller got hurt, but pretty good bloodlines in the Watt family between JJ and TJ. I mean, and TJ's building a resume that could land him in Canton down the road based upon the way he's performed to date. As Russ said, I mean, the philanthropy and the work he did post Katrina in Houston and the amount of money that he's raised even supersedes what he's done on the football field, which 3-time player of the year, 7-time All-Star or 7-time Pro Bowl. I mean, guy you would game plan against in order to be able to beat that team. He was in his prime the or one of the dominant defensive linemen in the league.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's not going to Buffalo, Mike.
Well, who knows? I mean, you never know, Russ. If he has brains, and
if he saw the last snowstorm, he'll stay away.
Yeah. Oh wait, Buffalo. See, snowpocalypse. Yeah, I'm clearly running to Buffalo.
Okay.
Mike, if you wanted to refute that, feel free.
Well, Mike,
it's the city of champion.
Where?
AFL and
lacrosse.
AAA and lacrosse, and they sell the cigarettes where they have the championship trophies for the box lacrosse. Yeah, okay, let's get started. We got a lot to talk about. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, December 27th, 2022.
I'm Jan Levine, and the NHL gets back to action tonight.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Go get wings at Gabriel's Gate, Mike's secret place.
Shut up. Secret. And I'm Michael Agello, and Russ can't keep his mouth shut. And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the World Juniors, and it was, it was almost. There were 2 big upsets and almost 3, and we'll start with the almost, because the Latvians in the U.S. after 2 periods. I talked to Shane Malloy this morning, and he. Some guy, I think you know him. Okay. And he was saying, it's like, I mean, going into the 3rd period, the Latvians had sort of outworked the U.S. I mean, But then the U.S. woke up, scored 3 goals in the third period, one walking away 5-2. And I think at that point, Russ, the talent started to show.
Yeah, no question. I think for the first couple of periods, there was one thing I really didn't like. With about a minute to go in the second, they had possession and they didn't really drive it. They didn't really try and get that third goal before going into the locker room. I was looking at that like that could be a mistake simply because Latvia was hanging with them. If the team hangs with you long enough in this tournament and can play some defense, you never know. But they did come out better in the third. I felt like they were less fancy. I felt like they weren't relying on their skating and passing drills almost that they were showing off. I felt like they got, down to brass tacks a little bit more. I felt like guys like Lane Hudson was starting to, penetrate, get shots on net. Gauthier, I felt like for the first couple periods wasn't deceptive enough. Late in that period, he did have a good deceptive shot, but he sort of ran out of real estate because when he shot it under the Latvian goalie, like all there was post. There was really nothing to shoot at. But I think he was starting to get it because he was a little frustrated. Things were good, though. In the end, it worked out. The goaltending, look, I'm not going to hang any goals on him, but I still think Emberico is better. We'll see what he does against Slovakia. The defense did well. That Luke Hughes shot was crazy just because I don't know if the goalie was set, and I think he kind of knew that, and he just kind of threw it. And I always tell people, go try and shoot a wrist shot from that distance. Just try it. Most humans would never even be able to reach the net. They wouldn't even get close. And he had something on that. And so that was an interesting goal, and that really helped turn things around.
Jen, I don't know if you saw it.
So I saw pretty much most of the games yesterday. So I thought U.S. looked, I wouldn't say discombobulated, but clearly took about 2 periods to kind of find their sea legs and gain some connections in terms of kind of playing together and things of that sort. I think they looked a little bit out of sorts in terms of it. And then kind of the third period, they kind of, found their connections, started to play U.S. hockey, started to drive a bit better to the net, better communications in their own zone, especially. I thought defensively was a much better third period than I saw in the first 2. But yeah, when the score was 2-2, everybody's going, And this is clearly obviously well before the Czechia-Canada game. They're going, are we going to get like a material upset for a team that's projected to win a medal? But they were able to kind of, look, in this tournament, it's win in advance. Right now in the initial rounds, it's get into the next round, get into the medal rounds itself and figure it out. And they were able to do so. You can clearly sense the talent on that team, but the chemistry definitely looked a little out of sorts, in my opinion, the first 2 period. And they kind of connected a lot better, in my opinion, in the third period, which is, bodes well clearly for them for the future.
The I don't say minor upset, but upset nonetheless was Switzerland beating Finland 3-2. Ross, I tracked some of the critique after that game, and one of the things that was really apparent was the stylistic direction of the Finnish team playing a trap in a World Junior game against a team like Switzerland who loves the trap. I mean, that's trap versus trap, or defensive versus defensive. And we know the Finns internationally, their reputation in terms of they're always tight defensively, they're always physical. But it seemed that the criticism after the game was that the Finns, with their superiority of talent, shouldn't be playing a trap against a team like the Swiss. And in the end, one mistake led to them losing in the opening game.
Well, I mean, look, the Finns have had some coaching problems, ups and downs over the years. Going back in, I forget the year when I was covering in Montreal and Carter Hart won the gold and Elias Anderson threw his silver into the crowd.
2018.
They fired their coach during that tournament, and there was a chance they were going to be relegated, if you remember. And that, for that to happen or almost happen would have been unbelievable. And it was unbelievable that it even got close. So I don't get shocked now when they have these coaching hiccups, because while they have great players in their program, every once in a while it kind of rears its head. I saw after the game there was just way too much criticism of Joakim Kemmel for one turnover. Like, come on. I was seeing things like, wow, now who knows when he'll play in the NHL and all these things. It's one game. Meanwhile, today against Slovakia, Kemmel's got 2 points. Like, it's just, let these guys play. Brad Lambert's got a nice goal today. Let them open it up a little bit offensively. You don't always have to be the shutdown team. They do have a lot of offensive talent. Let them use it. And, Switzerland can always be dangerous. They usually get halfway decent goaltending, and they were playing everybody back. Like, they just backed off, and they were just like, listen, you're going to have to go through 5 defensemen. Like, that's the way they were playing it. And, that could be hard, especially if you're supposed to play really good defense. So I think that was just one bad game, one bad matchup, a hiccup for Finland. I still think they're a strong team in this tournament.
Jan, any thoughts on this one?
Well, it was kind of interesting to watch, 5 guys in essence lined up almost at center ice to prevent them, right?
Yeah,
It was, as you said, the neutral zone trap was way more than neutral zone trap. They literally just put a box in the neutral zone and said, go ahead. And for the first 2 periods yesterday, right, they tried to skate their way through the neutral zone before figuring out maybe we should dump and chase and just hit people. They got the point. Look, for me, as Russ probably know, you guys know, right? I'm watching the Ranger guys. So watching Vasanen play yesterday for Finland, and look, they were up 4-1 last I saw on Slovakia today. They should get a win today. They're a very talented team. Give Switzerland credit. They played a perfect style to keep them in the game. Not necessarily the most exciting style, but one where it was a pretty physical game overall. They utilized their lack of talent by compared to Finland. They basically evened the playing field by playing a style that Finland really was not apt to play until they finally adapted in the third period. Just wasn't enough, but they were able to at least get, lost in overtime. So they got 8 points. And now that, they figure they'll win today, and you got to figure with their roster overall, should be in a fairly good position to be able to make it to the next round.
And I'm not going to be critical of Sweden running it up on Austria 11-0 because there's goal differential is part of it. And until they cap goal differential, which they probably never will do, I've always said, I would say, okay, if it's 11-0, the max that you can get in terms of goal differential is say +7. And then it ends. It's almost like calling a mercy rule in softball. It's like,
although it did seem like at the end, we'll talk about that Czechia took it easy on Canada. So
yeah, well, right, but it was only 3 goals. But when it's 11-0, I think it's a little obscene. I know. Now getting to the big upset, and everybody is like, it's like it's one game, folks. It's the opening game, and traditionally when it comes to Canada. In international tournaments, that first game is always the roughest one. They lose that one, and then it's a wake-up call. It's happened in the Olympics. It's happened in World Juniors. It happened yesterday. Everybody expected Canada to walk all over Czechia, and they didn't. And Czechia played I think a physical game, a pretty smart game. They frustrated the Canadians. Then the Canadians had some bad hunting luck, Russ. And at the end of the second period, I felt, and we were talking, if they had scored late in the second or in, they say, the first 5 minutes of the third period, I wasn't ruling out the possibility of Canada coming back in that game. But Juracek played fantastic. They win 5-2. And now officially the Canadians have their wake-up call.
Yeah, Juracek was great. David Spacek, who is the son of Jaroslav Spacek, played great. They played a style that certainly was not locked down because Canada had a lot of shots, but the problem was Canada just couldn't bury it. It was almost like they did have too much talent on the ice, and they had too many guys doing too many things at too many different times. It was a lot of one-on-one hockey. It wasn't a lot of team hockey. And so, even on the power play, they were lousy. Even though the movement was great and the almost goals are great and the Michigans and all that, they were still just in the basics of the game. They were actually lacking. And guys like Owen Zellweger who do that were really, trying to get them back into it and holding them into it. And they just couldn't because, again, they, for whatever reason, maybe it was nervous energy or whatever, they couldn't bury shots. And that's what really cost them.
Jan, on the TSN broadcast during the first intermission, and I think it was 2-2 at that point. No, it was 2-1 Czech. Jeff O'Neill was just ripping the Canadians for doing 2 Michigans in the first period and not converting on either one of them, but basically said that doing that was making it look like they were not being serious, that they were trying to be showboaty. And I don't know. I mean, you know, like
what you said, if they connected on one of the Michigans, it would have been like, wow.
Right. Exactly. That was going to be my point. Exactly. Okay. It's like if they connected, then it was like, oh my God, what an unbelievable skill play by Adam Fantilli, or what a great play by Connor Bedard. And they didn't connect. So now that was a point of criticism. I looked at the game, you know, I mean, obviously Canada is more skilled than the Czechs, but I mean, they didn't convert. And when you don't convert, then it does seem frivolous to do things like that.
Yeah, I mean, from watching the game, it was interesting. So, I mean, I thought if anybody, the first 5 minutes of the game, the pace was just ridiculous. I mean, the pace for overall was ridiculous, but I think the Czechs showed they were willing to be able to skate and play with Canada, not necessarily peeling back and being afraid to go toe-to-toe with them. They were able to kind of dictate the pace also. Canada did hit a couple of posts. Czech goalie played a great game overall. I mean, you talked about Russ. We said the goaltending for Canada was questionable.
Yeah.
Clearly did not necessarily have a game, although Milic, I thought, came in and did a nice job of steadying it, and he should be the starter.
Chris Peters,
next game,
we talked about
the way that he played. But look, give the Czechs credit. They got dirty goals when they had to. They created opportunities in front. They played with Canada and went toe-to-toe with them in terms of playing the speed game and utilizing their speed. The easy narrative say, and again, it was all over Twitter also, is, oh my God, Canada's disrespecting their opponents because of the Michigans, but it's just part of the style of play that's utilized these days. It's an easy narrative to say, well, they disrespected their opponents, and potentially there could have been a little of that, thinking they would have had an easier time. But as you said, this is clearly a wake-up call for them right now. I mean, you lose the first game, and people before the tournament talking how this was could be the greatest Canadian team ever in all the tournaments, and that's hyperbole in general because, as others said, they hadn't played a game yet, so who the heck knows? But it is an extremely talented team. They'll take the lessons learned here. I'm sure we'll substantively see a much better effort from them moving forward. The interesting part to see is what happens with Czechia moving forward. Is this game kind of an aberration, or is this kind of truly what we're going to see out of them moving forward for the rest of the tournament? That's kind of what I'm kind of interested in seeing what's going to happen.
Well, two things I wanted to mention. When we did our Lockdown Flyers show, we had Chris Peters on, and both he and I didn't like Goudreau, and we talked about Milic probably taking over. So you saw after that one goal went behind Goudreau and he had the glove there, like, that it was a problem. And this is just typical for Canada. It doesn't mean they're going to lose the tournament. This is just the problems that they always seem to have with goalies in international competition. You just go back. But Czechia does have good defense. They do. And they have good puck movers, and they do have some physicality. And so they can hang with some other teams. I mean, now that Juracek's got his gear back, he is a game changer at times. And so I think they will cause some problems. I don't know. Will they get out of will they advance? Mm-hmm. Maybe. I mean, they could be this year's surprise. There's always a surprise.
Yeah. So, we'll be checking in on the World Junior over the next.
Funny, Mike. Nice pun.
Actually, I did. I just realized that I said that after I didn't plan that out, but let's turn our focus to the NHL, and we get back. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 games tonight. Actually 12, because the Sabres Blue Jackets game that was scheduled for tonight was postponed. It was postponed because the Buffalo airport was closed, so they couldn't get out. They could have done what the Bills did, which was fly into Rochester and drive in, but I guess they
have open dates, so they don't have to do it. Yeah,
it's smart to do that. But just looking, okay, I want to talk about some of the injury news that's out there, but I just want to look at the standings here. Go division wide here. First, we've got a tight race in the Metro, where Carolina has caught up to New Jersey after New Jersey has dominated most of the first half, and most teams are 34, 35 games. So we're around, 41 is the first half. So we're getting close to, the end of the first half of the season. Carolina at 50 points, New Jersey 46, Rangers and Pittsburgh tied at 43, Washington at 42, Islanders at 40. I'll start with New Jersey, Russ, because I think that, nobody could stay as hot as they were early in the year, especially with the goaltending as I think questionable as it was. Not to say that Vanacek wasn't playing well, because he was, but it was Vanacek and Akira Schmid, and now Blackwood is back. But they lost 6 games in a row, and now maybe they're bouncing back a little bit. But I think this is sort of a reality check, sort of a situation where they weren't as good as what they were playing when they were near the top of the NHL, but maybe they're not as bad as losing 6 in a row.
Yeah, I think the goaltending is still a key. I mean, Vanacek was doing really, really well. But again, there's a game limit that has to be put on him, because at the NHL level, like last year was the most he ever played, 42. He's already played 22. And he's got a 909, 12-4. So he was the beneficiary of some okay play and great offense. I still don't know what Mackenzie Blackwood is. I don't. And if all of a sudden he's back and they don't win with him, then they're either going to Vanacek and him, or at some point they'll trade him and use Schmid as the backup. But I don't know if that's what they want to do, because that doesn't give you a lot of confidence. But right now, Blackwood's got an 882. I mean, it's just, I don't know. And but he's 5-3, because again, the team is a good offensive team. So I think even if Vanacek's not great, I mean, they're going to still ride him, I think. And I think Blackwood's going to end up being the backup this year, because I don't know if he's going to regain form.
Yeah, I mean, those concerns are valid, Jan. I mean, I just look at, first, obviously, the Marino injury, the Ryan Graves injury, which apparently is week to week, which I thought looked like an Achilles when it happened, but apparently it's not that, but it's something serious that's going to keep him out for a while. They really didn't have a ton of injuries. Everything was going fine except for the goaltending. Now they get Blackwood back, but now their defense, which I think was the strength of their team, is now down a couple important players. So I think that start is going to get them in the playoffs, but I don't know whether it's going to be top 3 in the division or wild card or what.
Well, we said there's 6 teams probably for 5 spots, presuming only 3 come out of the Atlantic. And just because they've gotten off to a good start, yes, it buys them a little bit of cushion, but the teams behind them have narrowed the gap. Obviously, Carolina has created a bit of a spread between them and New Jersey, but you look at the teams behind them, the Islanders, Rangers, Washington, I mean, they're all right there. I mean, Pittsburgh also, it's going to be a dogfight. So 6 teams, 5 potential spots. I mean, if you're going to do a coin flip based upon which one of those teams might not make it, and you're going to probably take bets, you'd probably say New Jersey, just given the fact that they're probably a little bit ahead of schedule, might be the odd team out. But that largely will depend on how long Marino and Graves are out. I mean, their defense, I mean, look, clearly what it means now is they can't really move Severson right now. No. He had been rumored to maybe be the odd man out, but I don't think that's going to happen, right? Hamilton has a little bit more pressure added on him to produce, and he's gotten hot again lately. Right. And then you look at the forwards and the guys, Palat coming back will be big for that team, because it substantively lengthens the lineup. It enables them to score. And if the defense is rough, they do have the offensive capacity and capability to be able to offset some of the defensive struggles. But clearly, you don't want 6-5, 5-4 games every night, because it makes it difficult to win and to be able to maintain your spot in the division, given the other teams that are somewhat now narrowed the gap substantively in terms of how narrow it is between 2nd and 6th, let alone between the top 6.
Carolina, there's not much to talk about.
I want to mention this, Mike, because Jan mentioned Palat. He is skating today.
Right. Yeah. No. But no,
everybody who knows, probably.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to be back probably before the All-Star break. And the All-Star
Andre Johnson's skating too. He matters a little bit too.
Yeah, but they sent him down to the minors, so I don't know how much. What I'm saying, they waived him. I think they were ready to walk away from him, or
maybe never know.
I think because of the injuries that they had, they needed to bring him up. Yeah. But as for Carolina, I mean, they're sort of they started okay. Now they've sort of gotten on a roll. They're 26-6-6, which is very respectable. And in terms of like the injuries that I'm gonna weave through all this. Pacioretty sounds like at the beginning of the year they were basically talking like Pacioretty might be out the entire season. Now it sounds like he's going to be back at some point in January.
Yeah, he's skating today, regular jersey, cleared for contact. I mean, my guess is figure a week, maybe 2, just to get his sea legs underneath him, give him a chance to run through a couple of practices, and maybe first or second week of January could be the return date for him, which is substantively ahead of what the projected schedule is. We talked the other day that, Waddell said that he was their quote unquote deadline acquisition. Well, that acquisition may come early, and we'll get a sense as to if there's anything else that they need, barring any other injuries, based upon an early return date for a guy they basically got for nothing.
Yeah, I still think Carolina is the class of the division. I picked them to win it. I think that it could be a year that they get to the Cup finally. I think Kochetkov is a really good goalie, and I did it on the strength of that, not on the strength of Ronta or Freddie Anderson.
Your favorite.
Freddie Anderson, who knows when he ever comes back. I mean, the last 2 years have been just a nightmare for him and for injuries. But their defense is solid. They do need a little more scoring. They are getting a bit more. Svechnikov woke up a little bit. They're going to get through this. They're going to be the leader. They're going to have the good positioning, and they're going to be really hard to beat. And I know the Rangers beat them last year, but if they matched up again this year, much tougher circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Rangers, if you had taken the Rangers last January, they weren't going to be a match either, right? The moves that were made at the deadline substantively improved that team.
Sure, but they're not going to be able to make as many this year. That's the thing.
No, they're going to have still a decent amount of cap room based upon what they freed up by accumulating. They won't be able to get guys early. They'll have to make trades literally right around the deadline because they'll have I think this the number I saw accrued when Reeves went out was somewhere in the $8 million or so range potentially by March.
After they get Kane, how much of that $8 million's left? 4.
Depends on if you've gotten double 50% or 50% from one team. If you get 50% from one team, it's about $5 million. That still leaves you a bit of room. When we talked yesterday, look, they get a wing and they get a third pair defenseman, and we've talked about the names yesterday, right? Gavrikov was the one Mike said in general. Got there that was probably going to cost the most. I mean, I said Kulikov would be a good guy potentially to add if they don't get Gavrikov, but there's enough third pair left-handed defensemen that are going to be available that aren't making a ton of money and will be UFAs. So while the cost will be prohibitive, you're not going to have to free up a ton of cap room based upon what's out there. But that largely depends. As we said, 6 teams, 5 spots. You have a 3-4 game losing streak, and all of a sudden you're on the outside looking in. Desperation may start to kick in, which is what teams that are going to be looking to deal are going to want to pounce on immediately.
They have to be sure, though, Jan. They have to be sure they could win the Stanley Cup, because if they're just making moves to go a couple rounds in the playoffs to get some playoff revenue, they're going to partially bankrupt what they have left as far as prospects in their system after Kane and Gavrikov. Neither of them are going to be cheap prospect-wise.
I agree, but I'm not saying they're going to go for both. And look, part of that is the risk-reward type thing. If they are playing as they've played lately, and granted, look, they've won 8 out of 9. Should they have won 8 out of 9? Maybe not. You got Washington, who's won 9 out of 10. But they also, will get into it, have a couple of absences on that team. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, again, Carolina is probably the class right now. I would say probably Boston right now is the class maybe of the Atlantic, given what we've seen, though Tampa's clearly right there. But you add a winger and a blue liner, and you have Shesterkin between the pipes. Kind of hard to say that you'd be a substantive underdog in any type of matchup coming out. And we know that the playoffs in general is a battle of attrition, right? I mean,
all right, so let me ask you this.
Healthiest, let's put it that way.
So let me ask you this. So with these changes, and with whatever changes Boston makes, do you think the Rangers could beat Boston? Because if you don't, you shouldn't make all these trades. You're going to have to ride something.
Yes, they could.
I would put Boston as a 60-40 favorite going into any series, but do I think the Rangers could beat them? Yeah, I mean, I do, because of the offensive talent up front that they have. And part of it depends on Shesterkin. Though, look, Allmark and Swayman is not a bad pair, but the Rangers would bad is a bad word. They are a good pair. Are they a player that you're going to go into the playoffs with substantive confidence in? If you're Boston, I'm not 100% sure that's going to be the case. But you look at the production line, you look at McAvoy, you look at their top 4 that we said yesterday. They're also going to be looking for a third pair blue liner. They're going to need to improve on what they have there on Forbort and Clifton on the back end. for them to make a run, and I think that's going to be their primary target going into the trade deadline.
People have to remember, Allmark is an untested playoff goaltender.
Yeah.
He never played a playoff
But he
game.
does have enough veterans there.
No doubt.
But he hasn't done it in the playoffs, is what I like pointing out.
Swayman played in the playoffs last year. So just two other teams from the division, because we covered the Rangers there. Washington, they had lost Orlov early in the year. I believe he's back now. Now Carlson may be out. What they term is long term.
Yep.
I guess he took a shot to the
face.
face.
It could still only be a week. It may only be a little more than a week. We don't know. Yeah. There was a lot of interesting talk when it first happened, and they were talking about him wearing a full face shield and all that stuff. And so when they put him on the IR, it has to be more than a week, right? But that's where Laviolette was kind of like, well, that's the way it's written up, so it has to be that. He didn't sound like it was. He felt like it was going to be long term. So
if it was long term, they could just put him on LTIR if they wanted to. I mean, they can still backdate it. They haven't done it yet. So the expectation is he may not miss 10 games in 24 days, based upon the length of absence he might be out. But that removes that. Look, Carlson has had a good year. He hasn't had a great year. He's been better lately. Look, part of it is the comparison to his year last year and his year a couple of years ago. He had 71 points last year.
Yeah,
he's had a good year, but they lost. They have Carlson out. In addition, they also have TJ Oshie out, missing his 4th straight game also, which is another absence up front for them. But they're getting Backstrom back, hopefully relatively soon also.
Well, maybe. And will it be Backstrom, or will it be a facsimile of Backstrom?
Even if it's a facsimile, if he's playing, he's still going to be able to dish the puck. Like, even Wayne Gretzky with a bad neck could still get, what do you have, like 70 assists? Like,
and Tom Wilson be coming back from the ACL injury, but it may take him a while to round into.
Wilson, I don't think is going to be back as quick as they were saying, because there was some talk, I saw it written somewhere, where he still has a little bit of pain, and so he's talking to like a different trainer other than the guy who's on the Caps. They both Backstrom uses somebody else that's from Sweden, and apparently Wilson has now started talking to the same trainer from Sweden to try and get him back quicker. So the feeling was, the person who was kind of giving me this information was like, yeah, Wilson seems like it's going to be a little bit longer, where Backstrom seems like this person helped him. And I said, well, maybe, the Capitals should hire this person. And they were like, well, this person lives in Sweden, has a family there, so maybe could only, come over and consult or train via Zoom. But it seems like this guy has made great strides with Backstrom. So we'll see what happens with Wilson.
I mean, the thing with Backstrom, I'd say, is more concerning because it is his back, right? And it's somewhat chronic given the injuries. Wilson, he blew out his ACL, had the surgery. It's slightly more than 7 months since he had the operation. They projected a December return originally. So, but I would say my guesstimate is probably All-Star break. After the All-Star break would seem to be relatively realistic. And look, if they can survive with both of those guys, then the question, look, Kemper has shown he can win a cup. You may not thought his performances were great last year, but he still has the jewelry that he's wearing on his ring finger.
I thought
wearing a cup last year.
I thought Backstrom was the hip resurfacing.
Hip. Sorry.
Okay.
Back. Sorry.
I'm just making
but
sure.
It is something that was chronic, obviously, that had to get taken care of.
Nobody's had a good comeback with that yet, but it's still, we said the same thing about Jack Eichel, and Backstrom is a cut above. So even if he's halfway Backstrom is going to be a help on that team.
And that lengthens the lineup substantially, especially when you get Oshie back and you have Ovechkin, and Dylan Strome has been very good since they brought him there. So that's a team that's just dangerous based upon the parts that they have overall and the flexibility to do other stuff if they need to at the deadline.
Now the Metro is 6 deep, and the number 6 is the Islanders at 40 points. And Russ, I think it's well chronicled our criticism, critique, and doubts about the Islanders. I don't doubt Sorokin. I think he's one of the best 2 or 3 goaltenders in the league. I think their defense is pretty good. But their forwards and their offense is a lot to be desired. And I know Kevin pointed out, well, they've only got 4 less goals than the Rangers. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think the Rangers are going to make additions that will help that offense. I don't know about Lou and the Islanders doing that.
Yeah, my issue there is And again, I feel like with the Rangers, there's more of this expected offense that's going to come alive at times. We've seen a little more out of Kreider. We've seen a little more out of Panarin. With the Islanders, I don't know. I mean, Zach Parisi's got 17 points. The fact that he gets 35 points, that's what he should be on pace for. Like, some of these guys, what do you expect them to get? I'm sure Wahlstrom could do a little more. Bavillier could do a little more. You know, Casey Cizikas is what he is. Like, you know, Josh Bailey at the 13 points, that's what Josh Bailey is. The problem is, and we've talked about it, they have too many of these guys that don't have a ceiling anymore. And they are all sealed in with contracts. Now, you know, again, great young players in Noah Dobson. Holmstrom, I don't know what you could really get out of him. I told you, I don't like him. I would keep Ratu up there if he's still going to be up there. When, you know, I know he played the one game. I would keep him up there because he's big and offensive. But even Wahlstrom, 16 points could do better. But end of the day, the high-end talent isn't there. Right. It's just not, especially on offense, other than Barzal. And Nelson's having a career year, and I've always liked Brock Nelson. Lee's healthy. You know, when you get past that little triumvirate, they start hurting.
And Jan, the thing with the Islanders is, I mean, to Russ's point, who right now is not producing at the level they expected to? Maybe Peugeot and maybe Bailey. Okay, say that they do that in the second half. Are they going to be a juggernaut offensively that's going to scare you? No. They need to go out and get at least one and maybe two top six forwards. And I just don't think that Lou Lamoriello is going to pay that price.
Well, the thing we did see is Aatu Räty came up the other day and scored a goal in his first game, and probably he was accelerated sooner rather than later, but it may be something that they may give him a shot if the other guys look. I would say generically, Bouvallier and Wahlstrom both have been mildly disappointing. I would say clearly probably Wahlstrom more so than Bouvallier based upon his usage and what you probably had as expectations. Peugeot is a third line center, right? It's kind of hard. He's playing on the power play, but how much are you expecting based upon the way the deployment that's used for those guys with Nelson and Barzal up front? He's not going to get an inordinate amount of time unless they move him to wing and slide him onto wing, but he's better suited centering that third line. I mean, it's expensive to pay a guy $5 million based upon that usage, but they're going to have to do that offensive guys. I mean,
he's great.
And Ryan Pulock hasn't panned out as well as expected either. He's been good, but clearly hasn't taken that next step forward. If you look at him and Dobson, originally you probably would have said Pulock was going to be the offensive defenseman out of the pair, and Dobson has far surpassed him.
Yeah, I still think Peugeot kills him with that $5 million because he is great with the faceoffs. He's okay to good defensively, depending on the year. But 42 points, like, he's never doing that again.
He's not the only one that kills them. I mean, they have 6 players making 5 or more. Okay, and all the ones that farm $5 million, Palmieri, Peugeot, and Bailey, I think are underwhelming for their salary. So it's not just the one; it's all 3. They're allocating, let's see, 14, 20, 35 million for their top 6 forwards, and they can't score.
Yeah, but part of it is the system also. Look, I think the guy that's probably taken the biggest drop this year has clearly got to be Josh Bailey. I mean, he was a healthy scratch a couple of times. He's got 13 points on the season, at 44 last year. I mean, a lot of the expectations were with Lane Lambert stepping in for Trotz. There might be a slight tweak of the system moving away from the defensive mindset to more of an offensive mindset, which would free up some of the guys to display their skills. And other than the year that Barzal's having and probably Brock Nelson and Dobson on the blue line, who can you point to that's exceeding or even matching expectations right now on that squad?
Right.
I don't think there's anybody.
In the Atlantic, you've got a block of 4. I'll approach it this way. You have a block of 4 teams: Detroit, Buffalo, Florida, Montreal, all within 2 points of each other. They're 6 to 8 points behind Tampa, third place. Of those 4, it would be logical to think that Florida would be the one to challenge Tampa for third, or at least move up to compete for a wild card spot. But Russ, Florida has been so dysfunctional this year, and their defense. I keep pounding on this, but when Gustav Forsling is your number 2 defenseman, your defense is not good, and that's the problem. I think Detroit's got a better case to challenge for the wild card than Florida does right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think it will be the Sabres, but I do think Detroit probably could put a real scare there. I think the only way it happens for the Panthers is another big trade that sort of wakes them up, because like they're a bad team on the road. They're 7-11-1. I mean, here's the reality. The reality is the East could stay exactly the way it is right now for the playoffs. Wouldn't shock me one bit. Teams coming in, teams coming out.
To quote Pete, this is what happens when you hire Paul Maurice.
Yeah. No, but you know what I mean?
Pete,
I mean, you look at it, and
absolutely. The Florida
I can see the Islanders being in one week, being out another week. I can see the Red Wings making it close, but in the end, I can see all these teams that are there now being those are the teams.
Look, I think Florida clearly has to be the biggest surprise. I mean, look, they made a material chemistry change by getting rid of Jonathan Huberdeau and getting rid of Mackenzie Weegar. And look, if you go talent per talent based upon what they got, Tkachuk is probably more talented than Huberdeau, or fits them if they made the playoffs. The loss of Weegar has been understated because, as you said, right?
Now we talk about it all the time on this show.
I think Forsling and Montour have been okay, but Weegar moving on has taken away that number two right behind Ekblad, who's also had an up and down year, and he's also suffered injuries. But look, Bobrovsky's not had a particularly good year between the pipes. Spencer Knight has been up and down by comparison. I know Kevin has defended Alexander Barkov, and yes, I'll say 31 other teams probably would want him. I don't think he's had a particularly great year. Now, part of that has been injury related, but he hasn't necessarily put that team on his back and carried them as you would expect from a guy from his talent base.
They're no longer scary offensively, and I do think the loss of Andrew Burnett does have something to do with that, because like right now, Florida at 114 goals, it's not like they're hurting, but the Sabres have more goals.
Yeah. I mean, they have more goals than Toronto, but Toronto has 82 goals against and Florida has 120. Yeah. That's almost 40 goals.
And that's what's killing them.
Now the top three in the division, obviously Boston is the best in the league right now with their ridiculous 27-4-2 record. Toronto's top three in the league, but they're 8 points behind Boston because Boston just doesn't lose. I mean, Toronto's in the unenviable position of being as good as they have been in the first half and still not even being within shouting distance of the. Now, I think the Bruins are going to cool off. Eventually they have to, but right now they're unstoppable. You can't catch them.
Yeah, I mean, they are. And Tampa's exceeded what I thought they would do. Again, this is going to be a tough spot for the Leafs in the playoffs because I don't expect Boston to relinquish that position. They're still undefeated at home, which is insane at this point in the season.
In regulation.
Well, it's still a big deal in regulation.
No, I know, but they've lost to Vegas and LA in a shootout or in over.
I mean, will it come down to the winter class?
They're 27-4-2. Linus Ullmark is 19-1-1.
No, but here's the question. Here's the question for historians. With Boston defending quote-unquote home ice for the Winter Classic, is that really, if they were to lose that game, is that really a home loss? I mean, it is in the.
It'll be a little asterisk, Russ.
Yeah,
lost at Fenway Park, right. One home game.
Yeah, I mean, what if that is their one? Like, it's funny, but yeah, Boston's
the Red Sox lose at Fenway all the time.
Boston's not going anywhere. They are getting a little stronger. This is probably the last gasp for for a lot of the older players there, and. Man, they're dangerous. They're really, really dangerous. I now, if you think of Boston matching up against Tampa in the playoffs, that would be spectacular.
So here's the better question with Boston. Let's push it forward 2 months. Let's say 3 months. Let's say Boston maintains a similar but not exact pace. They're going to fall back a little bit, right?
Right.
Do you mess with the chemistry and bring in a potentially high-scoring wing, or what are you filling around the edges besides defense? You bring in a depth forward just in case you need some scoring in case somebody goes down for the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm bringing in a guy that I could plug in and down the lineup, almost like a Yarn Crow kind of guy. I don't need much more than that.
Gustav Nyquist type of guy.
Yeah, Gustav Nyquist would be a good guy. I could put him on the second line, third line.
Right.
Based on injury, who's hot, who's not. That's what they need, is a plug-and-play kind of guy.
Insulates you from the top six injury where you can move a guy up.
Yeah, I'm looking for a third-line guy that can move up if necessary just to give you a hedge for the playoffs. That's kind of
maybe the perfect guy.
Yeah, whereas Toronto, I mean, I believe they're going to look for that top 6 left winger to play with Tavares and Marner. It may not be Bertuzzi because, like somebody in the chat was saying, he gets hurt all the time, and that's the last thing that they need. He's the type of player that they need in terms of a physical power forward, but he gets hurt all the time. They need that guy. Like, unfortunately, Nick Foligno got hurt after 3 games. If he had been healthy going into the playoffs against Montreal, they might have been able to weather the Tavares injury. But the Leafs need an impact forward. If they don't, I don't think they're going to go for the defenseman because I don't think they need it, and I think it's going to cost too much. So,
I mean, look, there's guys who are out there that are cheap that you can get that aren't making a lot of money.
Sure,
it's just going to cost you in terms. Look, you basically stole Michael Bunting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, in essence, that contract was, and we said at the time, was a absolutely ridiculous contract.
Yes,
based upon what he got. I don't know what teams were sleeping on, but clearly he wanted to go.
No, he had better offers, Jan. He wanted to play.
Right, he wanted to go to Toronto, but Toronto, as we talked about yesterday, has to get out of the first round.
Agreed.
I mean, and management knows they have to get out of the first round. I'm not sure if you push all your chips to the middle, but you sure as heck push almost all of them. You need to do whatever you need to do to find something to get you out of that first round.
Okay, shifting to the West.
Well, hold on, before we go to the West, Mike, so we can clip this for later in the season.
Yep.
Right now, your percentage odds of the Toronto Maple Leafs moving beyond the first round of the playoffs, what percent?
Well, you're saying as of right now?
As of right now, what you see right now.
They would play Tampa in the first round. It would be Toronto-Tampa.
50-50.
Okay.
Tampa's got Vasilevsky. They've got the championship pedigree. I mean, I think the Leafs are better. I think their goaltending is better, but it's still Tampa. And until you beat them, until they win, I won't believe that they will win. You know what I'm saying? That's a hurdle that is really tough. And playing Tampa, who've been to 3 Stanley Cup finals in the last 3 seasons, just makes the hurdle even higher to jump.
Funky put 19.67%.
There. Thank you. There. That's a really good one.
I got it. Look,
you're getting muted for 5 minutes on that.
Because of pedigree, because of playoff history, they also just recently got Cirelli back. They're relatively healthy for the first time really all year at Tampa. You have to put Tampa as the favorite in a series. Again, things are going to change based upon health, based upon players added and things of that sort. If looking at it right now, I'm sorry, it's 70-30 Tampa beating Toronto solely because of history and what existed between those two in the past.
And like I said yesterday, I would believe that Julien Brisebois is going to make a move before the deadline because he always does, and that'll just improve Tampa's chances. Shifting to the West,
2027 first round pick for a guy making no money.
I'm just answering the chat room. Matthew Nyes has aged himself out for the World Juniors. So
that's correct. Shifting to the West, the Central Division right now, you've got Dallas leading by 3 points over the surprising Winnipeg Jets. You have to say that Rick Bowness has done everything that he was brought in to do.
Do you believe in them though? I still don't.
I don't. I mean, they're doing this without Ehlers. Ehlers is out right now, so that's a significant loss. But they're going to get him back. And Colorado has just been decimated by injuries. I mean, here's the list here: Nichushkin, Landeskog, Bowen Byram, Josh Manson. Those guys are all out. So I mean, and the fact that they're winning and staying in third place right now is miraculous. And when they get everybody back, that they'll probably climb a couple spots. So I don't rule out Colorado, catching up to Dallas or Winnipeg and finishing either first or second in the division. But right now, so Winnipeg at 43, Colorado at 40, tied with Minnesota, and then there's a 6-point gap between Minnesota and St. Louis. I would write off Nashville at 33 and Arizona and Chicago. But I don't think Dallas has built an insurmountable lead, Russ, but I do think that with Ottinger and with the, Ben Sagan and that top line doing so well, I think that right now they're in a very good position to at least finish in second and maybe first.
Yeah, I think second seems right for them. Looking at Winnipeg, I mean, with Hellebuck playing the way he is, they're still not scoring enough for me. And if Hellebuck were to falter a little bit, they would have problems, I think. But as far as Dallas goes, I've got high marks for Jim Nill. For the last couple of years, there have been those rumors that, hey, he's going to hang it up, or hey, he's going to get fired or whatever. And you saw, Mike, I had a long conversation with Nil at the draft, and he was happy as could be and very relaxed, and he's done a great job. He really does not get the credit that he deserves for what he has done with that roster, with all the changes, with all the goaltending changes, coaching changes, all of those things. Everything's worked out great.
Now, Jan, are you a believer in Winnipeg? Because I give them all the credit for doing what they've done so far, but I am a little skeptical about whether they can continue to be at this pace. They're 21-12-1, whether they continue on that pace for the second half.
Well, I mean, look, them relying on Connor Hellebuck is something normal for them, right? They've done in the past. It's not ideal. They're also now making do. Blake Wheeler out until probably about another month, right? Nikolai Ehlers out probably another 2-3 weeks. Yeah. Cole Perfetti out at least another week and potentially more depending when he comes back. The benefit for them, though, is Josh Morrissey has morphed into a Norris Trophy winning candidate type defenseman, which is something we've been waiting for years. The part of it's going to have to be is like Colorado's done, can they weather the storm with 3 top 6, top 9 guys out for them to be able to stay in contention? If they can, given what we've seen out of Hellebuck in the past, yeah, I absolutely believe. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois taking a major step forward this year. Mark Scheifele's had a very good year. Kyle Connor, we know how good they are. The problem is their depth guys are really going to have to come to the fore with them out. The thing with Colorado is they also have 3 games in hand, right? Which benefits them if they can kind of tread water a little bit. They have 3 games in hand on Dallas. Eventually, you would think they're going to get healthy. Part of it, like we've discussed with other teams, is all they need to do is get in, right? The talent level on that team is ridiculous. Mikko Rantanen has started to put them on their back, and he's one of those guys that just doesn't get enough attention in the league based upon how good he is. But he is tremendous for that team and was tremendous for them in the playoffs. He just got overshadowed because Makar was good and McKinnon and Landeskog and everybody else. That to me, that's a team as we talked about is one of those teams, as you said. Can they just maintain pace in order to get to when everybody gets back and then kind of kick the engines going and get it started?
And Georgiev was second star of the week, and he's sort of proven that he is a number 1 goaltender. I didn't think, I thought it was going to be a 1A, 1B with Francouz, but Francouz has proved to be basically just a backup. And
that's what I kind of thought. I know you had those other thoughts, but
good. So I say he was hurt also, Francouz. He also missed some time. Which basically helps solidify Georgiev becoming the number 1. I know you asked Mike about Dallas also. Look, Dallas doesn't have a lot of depth, right? Jason Robinson has become a true heart candidate this year. I do still think they need a second-line center. Ty Dellandrea right now is their second line. Maybe Wyatt Johnston continues taking that step, but that's a lot of burden to place on a rookie to make him their second-line center.
Dellandrea is doing well, Jen, and he always was good defensively and decent with faceoffs. He might be able to pull it off.
But I do think they need another. Look, I think defensively they're good. We know how good Ottinger is. Look, we saw that game against Calgary last year when he was under siege, and the only reason why they made it to overtime in that game 7 was because of him. They're a stellar goalie. Look, I think Dallas is one of those teams that I would say Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, Minnesota are the teams that likely come out of the Central, mainly because, and we'll get to it, St. Louis has been very up and down. I mean, Jordan Binnington has literally been schizophrenic, right? It's 5-game win streak where he looks like he's the Vezina candidate, and then 5 games where he looks like he should be playing the ECHL.
And they're running into injury issues. Torrey Krug is out 6 weeks at least. They lost Perunovic early in the year, Russ, who would basically be the Krug replacement. They lost 7 in a row, or lost 8 in a row. They win 7 in a row. Binnington seems more focused on trying to get into fights than he does stopping pucks. They're a weird team because there's a lot of talent there, but I just don't know whether they can put it all together. And again, I keep saying this. This team has never been the same since they allowed Pietrangelo to walk. Doug Armstrong made the big mistake of not breaking the rule of, not giving him signing bonus or not giving him a no trade clause. When you have a player who's a linchpin franchise guy, you make exceptions, and he didn't make an exception for.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is with Krug out for the amount of time that he is, I don't know. This could be a year that St. Louis just fades out. Last year they had a nice resurgence. This might be the year they fade out, and with Binnington not really being at the top of his game and losing his cool too many times, not just fueling them. I don't feel great about the Blues at the moment.
But in the West right now, if there's a line of demarcation between top 4 in the Central and the top 5 in the Pacific, and then there's like a 5 or 6 point gap between the other ones. Say nobody makes a run on Vancouver or Nashville or San Jose. None of those teams make a run.
Which
so
is
basically,
likely.
right. So basically, you have 9 teams fighting over 8 spots, and teams 8 and 9 in the Pacific are Calgary and Edmonton.
I think in the end, if
Seattle.
I think it's Seattle that falls out.
Well, I mean, look, which way? Would you, if somebody asked you before the year that the Kings would be second in the Pacific, you would have said, "I'm sorry, you're crazy."
No.
Wait. And they would have told you that Cal Peterson got sent down to the AHL, and also that Jonathan Quick has struggled as well. I mean, you look at what that team is doing with 2 goalies who have been brutal right now, Russ.
I know, I get it, but again, I wouldn't have said you're crazy about that. I would have said you're more crazy with Seattle hanging it even this long. I would.
Yeah, I mean, right now,
Phoenix Copley has saved the Kings' bacon right now.
Now, the difference between
he's not a bad goalie.
Right now, the difference between Seattle, Calgary, and Edmonton is 2 points. So, I mean, Seattle could lose 4 or 5.
Listen, Mike, if you had to pick 2 of the 3 right now,
yeah,
which 2 of the 3 are making? You're saying Seattle's the odd man out?
Yes, Calgary and Edmonton. I mean, and believe me, it does not give me any joy to say Edmonton, because I think Edmonton is an entirely flawed team with an average defense and sort of below average goaltending. Although Skinner has sort of picked up the side for Jack Campbell, who's really struggled. I mean, they've done it without Kane. It's basically, again, the McDavid and Draisaitl show, and it's tiring. It is tiring that this organization. Go ahead.
It's not only them, Mike. I disagree with you, because look at the numbers Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has put up. He has had a very big year. It's unfair. Look, those 2 drive the bus. Nugent-Hopkins isn't a passenger right now. He's playing probably almost as well as he's played in years.
Neither is Zach Hyman, but I'm saying the train is being driven by McDavid and Draisaitl.
You have 2 hard candidates. Of course it's going to be driven by those 2.
Yeah, but
those are 2 of the best players in the league.
For that team to aspire to what everybody says that they're going to be, they need to be more than just McDavid and Draisaitl.
You need Stuart Skinner or Jack Campbell to play well, and right now it's been Skinner who's become the number 1.
You need a defense. You cannot have a defense that has Cody Ceci and Tyson Barrie and Philip Broberg playing on their blue line.
They have to get a defenseman. I agree with that. But I do agree your assessment's a little too harsh. I agree Jans is closer to what's right. But all they have to make up is 2 points. Like, that's all they have to do. The thing about Calgary is they could just sleepwalk and get into the playoffs, and they'll do something, but I don't trust Markstrom, so I don't think they can go very far with Markstrom. I mean, I think that's their Achilles heel. And then with Edmonton, I mean, Campbell's not done as well as I thought he would. Maybe he'll get hot. If he doesn't, what's Stuart Skinner done in the playoffs? Like, again, if Edmonton's going to go with Stuart Skinner in the playoffs, let's say Campbell doesn't do well, they could be one and done too. I mean,
I think
in my opinion, for Edmonton to take that next step, Evan Bouchard has to be a lot better. Yes. I mean, look, Tyson Barrie has been like up and down and up and down and up and down. And every time I think Barry's going to get surpassed by Bouchard, Barrie ends up becoming the number 1 power play guy, etc. Bouchard has had a very uneven year, in my opinion, based upon what the expectations
They both took a step forward last year, and they both took a step back this year. I think, was there a change in their coaching or something? Did I hear that? I forget what.
I think Barry's actually been fairly good this year, but I think Bouchard has been horrible, in my opinion, this year.
Yeah.
I mean, look, they have Darnell Nurse, who's also pretty good also, right? So,
he's
the talent is most certainly there.
Look, one on that blue line that I like. He's the only one on that.
Good. Sorry, Mike.
No, he's the only one on that blue light that I have any confidence in. But he's Bouchard. I think is a good young player, but I think he's taken a little bit of a step back. And random Canuck in the chat, like Toronto is the same thing. Excuse me. Look at the friggin' stats. Look at Toronto's given up 82 goals against.
Yeah, Toronto's defense is way better.
120. They've given up 40 goals more. And let me tell you something. If Edmonton plays Tampa in the first round, they lose in 5. They lose in 5. I'll sign up for playing against LA in the first round. I mean,
I think they beat LA in the first round. Honestly,
Toronto.
I think Edmonton would also beat LA in the first round.
But here's the weird thing. As much as Mike is anointed Skinner, his save percentage is below last year.
He's not.
It's on comparison to Jack Campbell. He's been
all
better.
it does is keep Edmonton in the playoff hunt and maybe get them into the first round. But I don't know if it gets them out of the first round. That's the crazy part.
Well, here's the problem, Mike. What goalies are going to be available at the deadline?
No,
even
there
if you
won't be
wanted to get a goalie, who's going to be out there?
They're stuck with those goalies. That's
right.
Their goaltending tandem going in the playoffs. No
and
doubt.
For the near future, because they signed Campbell long term and they signed Skinner for 3 years.
Right. Yeah. No, you're not trading Campbell. You're not buying him out. You've got 7.6 next year, $7.6 million in goaltenders with those two, and you're stuck with them.
The mistake that Edmonton made was losing Alex Stalock, because Alex Stalock is having. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Hold on. Is he having a good year or not?
Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. He's having a very good year for a bad Chicago team.
On a bad team.
Where, in Rockford?
No,
Chicago. Okay. You're just being a you what know what, Mike. I'm not going to curse on the air right now, but you're just being kind of douchey right now when it comes to this.
Alex Stalock, .917 save percentage with Chicago in 8 games.
Okay, yeah, but that's with Chicago.
That's with Chicago. You don't think he would do better with Edmonton?
And Peter Mrazek has an .874 goals. Well, you know what?
No, but forget about that. You're just deflecting. Do you not think that Stalock would be better for Edmonton right now? He would make them better. He's a veteran goalie who's good. He's healthy.
They determined he wasn't good enough to help.
Well, they haven't determined much in their goaltending.
Oh, yeah, their ability to evaluate goaltenders when it comes to Mikko Koskinen and Methuselah Smith. It can be called into question. But Alex Stalock is nothing more than a backup in the NHL. That's my opinion.
Last game he gave up 2 goals.
Okay.
Okay. Against the Islanders, he gave up. Well, the Islanders he only came in relief.
Yeah. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. We'll have Kevin Allen back. We'll have Eck back. For Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.